11:47 p.m. Dark Service Road, Footscray. You're sitting in the driver's seat of a 2009 Commodore with the engine off and rain bleeding through the window sill, tracing a thin line down the inside of the door. You haven't moved in 20 minutes. Not because you're calm, because there is nowhere left to go. Your phone sits face down on the center console. Then it vibrates. You pick it up. Unknown number. 3 words. Police are coming. Not might be, not heard something. Are. Present tense. Immediate. You're 25 years old, and in this moment, you need to figure out something very simple. Do you have 60 seconds before they find you, or 6 minutes? Because that's the difference between a story you tell later and a story someone else tells about you. Stay with me, because the reason you're sitting in that car, the reason your hands are steady even though your whole world is collapsing, starts 3 years earlier, in a frozen warehouse in Laverton, with a phone buzz from someone you barely knew, and a single word you typed back without thinking. You were 22 years old and invisible, not underground, not laying low, invisible in the way that actually hurts, the kind where nobody remembers your face at the end of the day, the kind where you could not show up tomorrow and the world would keep moving without skipping a beat. 6-to-2 shift at a logistics warehouse in Laverton, steel-capped boots, a high-vis vest so faded it barely counted as a color anymore, moving frozen pallets through the same cold aisles, under the same humming fluorescent lights, for a company that didn't know your name, just your employee number, just your scan and time, $24.80 an hour, before tax. And Melbourne is a brutal city if you don't have money. That's the part that never makes the tourism ads. Melbourne is beautiful if you have money. If you don't, it just means you're surrounded every single day by evidence of everything you're not. Restaurants where pasta costs $40. Apartments that disappear from rental listings within the hour. Bars with velvet ropes where the people inside never seem to carry the weight you carry. One night late after a shift, you're walking home past a bar on Collins Street. You slow down. Through the window, a table of men roughly your age. Tailored shirts. A waiter pouring wine without being asked. One of them is mid-laugh and doesn't even glance up. You stand on the footpath and watch. And you feel something. Not jealousy. Jealousy is what you feel about things that are almost within reach. What you feel standing on that footpath is something colder, something heavier, like watching a game through the glass. A game nobody ever gave you the rules to. That thought follows you home, sits with you through dinner, keeps you flat on your back staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. What do they know that I don't? Not what do they have, what do they know? That's the question that changes everything. Because 2 days later your phone buzzes with a message from someone you haven't spoken to in years. Tom, a guy from school in Werribee, not a close friend, just someone who orbited the same circles back then. You'd barely thought about him since. The message is simple. You free Thursday night. You ask why. Quick cash, nothing complicated. You ask how much. The reply comes instantly. $250 cash. You look at your phone, then you look at your bank balance. Afterpay debt, rent due in 4 days. A message from your mom asking what you're doing for Christmas sitting unanswered in your inbox. And you type back one word. Yes. Here's what I want you to understand about that moment. You didn't make a calculated decision. You didn't weigh up risk and reward. You didn't sit there thinking about consequences. You were 22 years old, broke and tired, and someone offered you $250 for one night's work. That's it, that's the whole equation. And without realizing it, without any dramatic moment, without any music swelling in the background, you take the first step into a world that almost nobody walks out of clean. Thursday arrives faster than you expect. You finish your warehouse shift at 2:07 p.m. Same forklift, same cold air, same fluorescent hum. Nothing about the day feels different except that every 20 minutes you're checking your phone. Tomo sends the address at 6:12 p.m. Industrial strip behind McIntyre Road in Sunshine North. No business name, just a unit number. You drive there just after 8. The street is quiet, panel beaters, tire shops, roller doors pulled halfway down, the kind of strip that exists in every outer suburb, the kind you drive past 1,000 times and never actually see. The unit at the end has no signage, Just a roller door and a security light buzzing and flickering slightly above it. You park across the road, engine running, watching. 2 minutes pass. Then the roller door lifts halfway. A man steps out, late 30s, heavy build, black hoodie. He doesn't wave, he doesn't look around. He looks directly at your car. He's been expecting you. You cross the road, step inside. The roller door drops behind you. The smell hits first. Cardboard and machine oil. Pallets stacked along one wall. Plastic wrap hanging loose from a dispenser in the corner. The man in the hoodie walks toward you. You Tomo's mate. You nod. He studies you for a moment, the way people do when they're deciding whether you belong somewhere. Then he turns and gestures toward a small brown box sitting on a workbench near the back. Tape across the top. Nothing unusual about it. You know the rules. You shake your head. He almost smiles. Good, easier that way. He slides the box toward you. Carlton North. Address is already in your phone. Don't open it. Don't stop anywhere. Don't be late. You pick it up. It's lighter than you expected. Almost harmless. You ask the only question that actually matters. How late is late? He looks at you for a second. Late is when people start asking questions. You carry the box to your car, set it on the passenger seat, start the engine. And the drive across the city is when it starts. That quiet hum of something you can't quite name. Not fear, not excitement exactly. Awareness. Every passing car feels significant. Every red light feels longer than it should. The box sits on the passenger seat, not moving, not making a sound, being completely ordinary. And your brain will not stop asking the same question on a loop. What's in the box? You tell yourself it doesn't matter. People move packages every day. Couriers, delivery drivers. It's just an object going from one place to another. But couriers don't get paid $250 for one small package across the city in the middle of the night. And here is the thing you never let yourself fully think. You already know what's in the box. You knew before you picked it up. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet. Because the moment you admit it, you have to decide, are you someone who does this or aren't you? And right now, with rent due in 4 days and $250 sitting at the other end of this drive, you're not ready to answer that question. The drop goes exactly as described. Narrow street in Carlton North. A man in a leather jacket waiting beside a parked hatchback. He opens your passenger door before you say a word, takes the box, checks the tape, satisfied, reaches inside his jacket, drops an envelope in your lap. Nice and easy. Gets back in his car and drives away. Just like that. No conversation, no signature, no explanation. You sit there for a moment staring at the envelope. Open it. 5 crisp $50 notes. $250. For 40 minutes of driving. Your warehouse shift tomorrow will pay less than half that. You drive home turning numbers over in your head. 1 run, $250. 10 runs, $2,500. More than a full week at the warehouse. You lie in bed that night staring at the ceiling. And the question isn't what was in the box anymore. The question is how many more boxes exist. Your phone buzzes the next afternoon. Same again tonight. And you already know what you're going to type. Here's the thing about how people fall into things. It's never one big moment. It's never a dramatic choice where you stand at a crossroads and consciously pick the wrong path. It's a series of small yeses. Each one feels almost identical to the last. Each one is slightly further than the one before. And because every step feels like a small step, because you never feel the full weight of the distance you've traveled, you don't notice how far from where you started you actually are. The second job pays $500. The third pays $800. The fourth crosses $1,000. For the same simple rule every time. Drive, deliver, leave, ask no questions. By the end of the third month, you've stopped working weekends at the warehouse. By the end of the fourth, you're barely showing up at all. You keep the routine just long enough to avoid raising questions. But something has fundamentally shifted. Your phone looks different now. Contacts with no names, just numbers. Messages that never explain anything directly. Addresses, times, quantities. Instructions that are always just vague enough that if someone saw them on your screen, they'd mean nothing. You stop checking your bank balance with anxiety. Now you check it with something closer to curiosity. How far can this go? And then Tomo sends a message that feels different from all the others. Big job tonight, Port of Melbourne, midnight. I'll explain when you get there. The port at midnight is something you never forget the first time you see it. Even in the dark, the scale of it is almost impossible to process. Cranes moving in slow arcs over stacks of containers. Massive steel boxes rising 4, 5 stories high, each one identical, each one sealed, each one logged in a system somewhere. Ships sitting in the harbor with navigation lights glowing along their decks. All of it moving, all of it continuous. The world's entire supply chain, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without pause. Tomo is waiting beside a white ute near the fence. The heavy man from Sunshine North is there too. He gives you a single nod when you arrive. You've made it this far. That means something. Tomo steps toward you. Tonight you stop being a courier. He points toward the rows of containers. Tonight you learn where everything actually comes from. He walks you into the yard, past row after row of identical steel boxes. The ground is wet. Lights buzz overhead. The air smells like salt and diesel. Tomo stops and looks out across the yard. You think customs checks all of these. You look around. Hundreds of containers in your line of sight alone, stacked in rows that stretch further than you can see clearly in the dark. They check about 2%. He lets that sit for a second. 2%. Meaning right now, in this yard, 98 out of every 100 containers sitting here will move through this port without anyone ever opening the doors. Without anyone ever looking inside. Tomo walks to a specific stack near the back of the yard, checks a handheld scanner against a number on the container door. Bolt cutters come out. The seal snaps with a sound like a small bone breaking. The doors open with a low metallic groan. Inside, wooden crates stacked from floor to ceiling. Commercial cargo, everything exactly as the manifest describes. Tomo climbs inside, walks to the third crate without hesitating, knocks twice, then takes a crowbar and pops the lid. Underneath the top layer of legitimate product, smaller boxes, dozens of them, tightly wrapped in plastic, packed edge to edge. He lifts one and hands it to you, heavier than it looks. Congratulations, you've just been promoted. And standing in that container in the dark, in the middle of the port, you finally understand the architecture of the whole thing. Those runs you'd been doing for months, the deliveries, the drop-offs, the packages moving quietly across the city, those were the last mile, the final handoff, the smallest part of the operation. This is where everything begins. Ships arrive carrying legitimate cargo with something else hidden inside. Containers move through the port. One gets quietly opened. The extra cargo disappears into the city before customs ever touches the doors. The container closes. New seal. From the outside, completely untouched. It's not a delivery business. It's a pipeline. And the pipeline runs through one of the busiest ports in the southern hemisphere, moving inside one of the world's most trusted logistical systems. Because nobody ever thinks to look. Over the next 4 months, the operation becomes something you can barely believe you're part of. Your role expands almost without you noticing. First deliveries, then port runs. Then you start organizing the drop-offs, managing drivers, routes, meeting points, quantities. Your phone never stops. Messages at 2 a.m., at 5 a.m., at noon on a Tuesday. Numbers that add up to figures that would make most people's heads spin. You stop thinking in deliveries and start thinking in volume. And the volume is something else entirely. Because here is what you understand now that you didn't at the start. The operation doesn't exploit a weakness in the system. It exploits the system's greatest strength. Trust. Nobody questions a sealed container with the right number on the side. Nobody opens a crate that matches its manifest. Nobody looks twice at a truck leaving through the gate with the correct documentation. The whole thing moves because the world agreed a long time ago to trust the numbers. And when you know which numbers to change, you can move almost anything. But here is what nobody tells you about that kind of life. The weight of it isn't dramatic. It's not cinematic pressure bearing down on you every day. It doesn't feel like danger on a daily basis. It feels like a job. And that is the most dangerous thing of all. Because the moment it feels like a job, the moment the edge stops feeling like an edge, is the moment you stop being careful in exactly the ways that matter. 4 months of clean runs. Not one problem. Not one close call. Not one container flagged, not one vehicle pulled over, not one message that felt wrong. The operation runs like a system that was built to run forever. That's exactly when it starts to crack. A shipment arrives from Southeast Asia. Standard procedure. Dozens of containers unloaded onto the yard under the floodlights. You know the container number. You know the stack. You know exactly where everything needs to be. Same setup as every other run. Bolt cutters, container open. Packages move into the ute, quick, efficient, no conversation, container closed, new seal. From the outside, untouched. The ute pulls out of the yard. You follow behind. It feels like every other night, until you're halfway across the bridge and Tomo's phone rings. You watch him through the windscreen up ahead. Watch him glance at the screen. Watch his hand tighten slightly on the wheel before he answers. He listens for 10 seconds. Hangs up. Your phone vibrates immediately. Change route now. You call him. What happened? There's a pause that lasts just long enough to tell you everything. Customs flag the container. Your mind goes straight to the yard. The stack, the seal, the gate, every person who could have seen you, every camera angle you mentally mapped on the way in. Hell, they're running the number against the manifest. The container is back in the stack, seal replaced. From the outside it looks untouched. But if they open it, empty crates, space where the packages were, evidence of something that was there and is no longer there. And the moment they find that, the clock starts. Did anyone see us? Not that I saw. Then we move, right now. The ute disappears down an exit ramp, smaller roads, industrial streets where trucks move through the night and nobody looks twice. You follow, headlights low. Every passing police car takes on a different weight than it did an hour ago. Because you understand something in that car on that bridge that you can't unfeel. Australian BorderForce is at the port right now, and they don't just open the container and walk away. They pull the thread, shipping logs, container movement records, security camera footage from the gate, vehicle registrations caught on cameras going in and out. The trail exists. It always existed. You just trusted it would never be followed. The packages are gone in under 20 minutes, distributed, vanished into the city. By the time any investigator traces that container number to a vehicle at the gate, there's nothing left to find. Tomo stands outside the warehouse after, leaning against the ute. He lights a cigarette, stares out at the empty street. You stand beside him. Neither of you speaks for a long time. Finally, what happens now? He takes a long drag. Now we wait. For what? For them to decide how much they know. Because once they flag a container, once someone starts pulling the thread, things change. Not fast, not dramatically, slowly, quietly. Records get reviewed, patterns get noticed. And somewhere in those patterns, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. Tonight was close, closer than I like. And you feel it then. For the first time since that unit in Sunshine North. For the first time since the first yes. You feel the actual edge of this thing. Not as a concept. Not as a distant risk filed away somewhere in the back of your mind. As a real, physical, immediate thing. A door that was wide open. Starting to close. 3 days later. Nobody has been arrested. Nobody has been questioned. The operation keeps moving. But you've changed. Not visibly. Not in any way anyone around you would notice. But the thing that let you sleep easy for months. The belief that the system was invisible. That the machine was untouchable. That belief has a crack in it now. And once something has a crack, you can't stop seeing it. You park on a service road in Footscray 3 nights after the bridge. Engine off. Rain coming through the window seal. And you sit there in the dark and turn the whole thing over from the beginning. A message from someone you barely knew. A box that weighed almost nothing. A drive across the city in the rain. 5 $50 notes in an envelope. One word that started everything. You think about the man on the other side of that restaurant glass. The way he didn't look up when the waiter poured the wine. You think about the warehouse, the forklifts, the fluorescent lights humming over frozen pallets. You think about the port, the 2%, thousands of containers moving every single week through a system built entirely on trust. And you think about the thread, the one that got pulled 3 nights ago, the one that's being followed right now, quietly, by people who are very good at following threads. Your phone vibrates. Unknown number. 3 words. Police are coming. And here is the thing about that moment. There's no panic. There's no dramatic decision. No cinematic choice. There's just a man sitting in a dark car in the rain in Footscray, completely still, turning over one question in his mind. How does something this big run this long without anyone noticing? And the answer is the same one that pulled you in. The same one that pulls almost everyone in. Because the system looks exactly like the world is supposed to look. Containers arrive, numbers match, trucks leave, everything moves the way everything is supposed to move, until someone finally stops and asks one question nobody thought to ask before. What's actually in there? The door of the car is already open. The rain is cold, and the story you tell from here. That part's up to you. If this kept you watching until the end, you already know why. Drop in the comments, at which point would you have walked away? Because I'll tell you this, most people think they know the answer to that question. Most people are wrong. Subscribe, the next story goes deeper.